This entry on the concept of reflexivity is based on a collaboratively written chapter entitled Navigating Urban Agroecology with the Social Sciences, published in the book Urban Agroecology, Interdisciplinary Research and Future Directions. As part of this video lexicon, we'd like to outline 3 important dimensions of reflexivity. First, we'd like to highlight that reflexivity challenges the idea of value neutrality because researchers are not objective instruments that discover scientific truths. Social science perspectives remind us that we are always humans, trying through research to understand the actions and reactions in networks that extend far beyond our scope of experience. For social scientists, reflexivity often refers to recognizing our social locations in terms of class, race, gender, and other forms of privilege and marginalization, also called positionality, and reflecting on what that position means for the knowledge that we co-create and use when engaging in research. Second, we use the term reflexivity cautiously as the researcher is inseparable from the messy entanglement of socio-ecological relations in which they are embedded. Consequently, there is no removed space from which to reflect. In fact, because there is no such thing as completely transparent reflexivity, reflexivity is always a process that involves continually revisiting and deconstructing the assumptions in ourselves and in the tools we use, and identifying the values present in our decisions, observing their impact on the social and ecological context within our research is entangled, and making efforts to modify our actions and relations based on these reflections. Third, it is also important to recognize that our research is enmeshed in our own biographies, those of our disciplines, as well as those of our institutions. Therefore, practicing reflexivity about these positionalities is done not so much to focus on us as individual researchers, but instead to focus on how, as Nagar and Ali argue, researcher identities intersect with institutional, geopolitical, and material aspects of their positionality. Reflexivity involves navigating multiple divides of power, such as those between academia and communities. To provide you with an example of how we employ reflexivity to identify and challenge power relations and inequalities, we would like to discuss a project 3 of the co-authors have been involved in over the past decade. Through the work of the Twin Cities Agricultural Land Trust, we have used our research on urban agroecological land management and our positions in institutions of higher education to advocate for structures, institutions, and other conditions that support urban agriculture, particularly through land access. Land in this area is Dakota and Ojibwe territory and exists in a social context distinguished by significant migration from the U.S. South and Central and South America, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. We practice critical reflexivity about our social positionality to enact research processes and praxis that are embedded in social networks that partner with indigenous and migrant communities and value the guidance of elders and growers. These are ways we can reflexively acknowledge and work to change exploitative and dispossessing conditions set up as default in the settler colonial definitions of land as, quote, property that exist with the goal of maximizing capital investment. Community land trusts work to decenter white and official expertise and charitable, quote, helping in favor of healing relationships with land. In conclusion, as researchers working in community geography, we should practice critical reflexivity to be aware of how our identities and positionalities are embedded in broader power dynamics, and that involves critically reflecting on everything from what we choose to research and why, to how our findings get disseminated and who gets credited for knowledge production. We'd like to conclude with a few praxis considerations within the challenging colonial, gender, racialized, and class politics of community geography in the U.S. and elsewhere. These include creating research communication that uses language that is gender inclusive and accessible to communities for whom the research matters. Settler and white researchers should recognize their positions and refrain from imposing undue burdens on indigenous and racialized people, to educate and manage emotions associated with settler guilt and racial privilege, or to respond to researchers' felt urgency to, quote, fix situations. Finally, reflexive practice asks us to examine what is being researched or written about, for whom, how, and why, to account for the tendencies of research projects and their products to further academic careers rather than benefit the communities being studied. These are our image sources, and these are our references.